All right, so we are on week 8 of the Range of Strength teacher training. And this week we are getting into part 2 of contraction techniques, specifically looking at what we want to consider and best approaches for when we move to more high intensity range positions, such as splits and bridges, and basically any kind of extreme outer range position. We're going to look at some of the things that we want to consider as we advance to these techniques to maximize our tension and ultimately the result within these positions. Previously, what we discussed was more so about making the connections in the stretch by creating isometric contractions and learning to be in the stretch. But what we now want to examine is the means of advancing this. So taking what we've previously learned with regards to antagonist muscles, the ones being stretched, agonist muscles being shortened, activating those, increasing that mind-muscle connection in a stretch, and how we're going to advance that. So what we're going to do is look at 2 applications that I prefer for this. And within that, we will examine it a bit further, what this means for us and how we want to use them, and then apply it in this week's lesson. So the first application we're going to look at is the CRAC method. And what CRAC stands for is contract, relax, agonist, contract. So up to this point, we have learned that the antagonist muscle is the muscle that is being stretched and how we can create contractions in a stretched position, as well as learning that the agonist muscle is the muscle that is being shortened and pulling us deeper into the stretch. Further, we have examined the end-range agonist activations. So we've explored the means of more advanced approaches to these contractions by getting away from basic stretching to then moving to those advanced methods of end-range strength. And now we're going to look to bring these 2 contractions together in a more advanced way in greater outer range positions. What we have learned up to this point aligns with the reciprocal innervation model. And basically this model states that the contraction of a muscle will result in the simultaneous relaxation of the corresponding antagonist. So what we can think of is like when we contract a muscle and shorten it, the antagonist muscle will relax and lengthen greater. So bringing these 2 together, agonistic contractions within these deeper stretches, will allow us to take advantage of those positions getting deeper into our stretch positions. Best protocol for this is going to be short bursts of 5 to 10 seconds of an antagonist contraction, so contracting the stretch muscle, and then an agonist contraction. So for example, if we're in our side split, we're going to think about a ramping contraction of the adductors and groin for a short burst of 5 to 10 seconds, where we will then relax and activate our agonist muscles, which will be the glutes, hips, piriformis area, trying to abduct and get deeper into the stretch. One of the things that we want to consider introducing within this method is also the irradiation concept. And irradiation basically states that by creating more tension throughout the whole body, it helps produce greater strength in the stretch stimulus. So we've done some of this in the live streams already, where we've talked about, again, for example, being in a side split position. It's a really easy example, creating tension in the upper body as a result of trying to produce more strength and force through the lower body. So we've talked about like arms stretched, contracted, arms pressed in the side. This can apply for other positions like the front split. We can apply these irradiation contractions and tensions so that we have a greater result. So within the CRAC method, we want to think about then introducing these applications of higher tensioning through the whole body to produce more force and to be in a stronger position. The other application that I want to look a little bit further into is the ascending and descending sets approach. So in the optimizing end range strength lesson, we've looked at ascending and descending sets as like a protocol. So we can basically start at our easiest position, work our way up to our hardest position, and then opposite to that, we can start at our hardest position, work our way down to the easiest one. That works quite well as an introduction in those end range strength applications. But now we can think about this a bit further as we get to high intensity range work. And this is something that I've had a lot of success with, is using high intensity splits positions, back bridge positions to apply the variation of sets. So specifically variations of outer range stretch positions within a workout. So rather than just saying we're going to hold an isometric split position for 4 sets of 5, we have variations of that: a passive side split, a more moderate active side split, like side split to extension, and then, you know, getting to something more advanced like an isometric side split or a negative side split where we're sliding down, eccentrically loading the adductors. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of how this might look for high intensity range work. So for side split, we have a passive side split in set 1. Set 2, we have a side split extension exercise. So that's where we're moving from a seated position and we're extending up through into an isometric side split, extending through the hips. Set 3, we have an isometric side split, and then we're going to actually descend back down and do a side split extension and a passive side split. So this is one example of both ascending and descending within the same workout. Another variation of this could be that we descend up to our iso side split and then we stay there for some top sets. So very similar to maybe some strength training application as well. But the thing in strength training is that you basically are warming up and putting more weight on the bar. Whereas when we get into more high intensity positions for flexibility, we're really subject to one position and just hoping that we are going to get deeper and better at it. Through the course of variation within a set and in these positions, we can optimize our end range better and make these connections that we're looking for long-term strength. So a second example for the bridge, we can use a low bridge, an elevated bridge contraction, and then descend back down. Elevated bridge just holding, low bridge at the end. And within that, we would want to be considering the differences we feel from moving up to our top position. Another reason why this might work well is in previous teachings, I've talked about exposure method. Ascending and descending sets work really well if we're exposing someone to a new outer range position. So we could then use what they've previously learned, ramp them up and expose them to that, and then ramp them back down. The third example for front split would be the long lunge hold, the long lunge pulse, an iso front split rep, or reps on both sides, and then descending back down with the pulse and the hold. So this is actually assignment 8. so forgive me for that little assignment 3 note there. But what we're looking to do this week is we're actually looking to apply, we're going to apply those 3 examples I just provided of ascending and descending sets. And within that, within each of those sets, I want you to apply the contract, relax, agonist, contract method. Share a screenshot of each of those examples and some insight on what it was that you experienced using the ascending, descending protocols, and whether or not you felt like you had to stay, or that you would have potentially felt better if you would have stayed at the higher intensity, or share how things felt like they opened up quite a bit more as you descended back down. And also share potentially that you yourself might be at a stage where you just needed exposure to that higher intensity, and then it's good to come actually back down. A good lesson to review this week would be the range of strength, high intensity range lesson. So we talk a little more deeply about application of getting deeper into high intensity range exercise, such as splits, back bridges, head to toe, more advanced protocols. And really that is categorized all under the specific column of range of strength library selection. That is it for this week. 4 more weeks to go.